Hey there, Andy here from SweetAdditions.com. We all know legal secondary suites in homes increases the value of the property and can increase your cash flow if you're renting it out. Here are the top 10 things you should look for if you're planning on buying a property in Ontario and you want to have a legal secondary suite. Number 1, does it already have an existing legal secondary suite? If the unit existed before legislation took place in 1995 and this can be proven, then it's legal non-conforming, which means the unit is grandfathered in before legislation. This gets you past many of today's building codes and specific bylaws in each city, so it's essentially legal. You do, however, need to bring it up to the current fire code. The other option is if someone constructed a unit with permits and registered it with the city, then it's also fully legal. Unfortunately, if it was completed without permits, even if it's done correctly, it's not considered a legal unit, regardless of what the MLS listing says. Number 2, make sure secondary suites are allowed in your area. If your intent is to put in a legal secondary suite, it doesn't make sense to buy in an area where they're not allowed. Although provincial legislation, Bill 140, the Strong Communities Through Affordable Housing Act, now requires that all cities allow secondary suites, there are still zones within each city that don't allow them. The easy thing to do is to call the city building department first to find out. Don't be nervous, they're really friendly. Number 3, do you have enough ceiling height? If your secondary suite is in the basement, which most are, make sure you have the proper ceiling height measured from the top of the finished floor to the bottom of the finished ceiling. Although the building code specifies the requirement, it can be different depending on bylaws within each city. Know what's required in your area. If you had to dig out a basement to get the proper height, that can potentially add $30,000 to your project. Unless you happen to have $30,000 lying around, then you're golden. Number 4, is there parking available? In almost all cases, at least 2 parking spots will be required, sometimes 3. Some cities allow tandem parking while others require parking to be side by side. Make sure the property has this. In some areas, there's no parking available at all, even for the original home. In these cases, you would have to apply for a minor variance, which can add a lot of time to the project. Also, if parking is not available, good public transportation is a must. Number 5, is there a good distance from property lines? This is one that often gets overlooked. Even though you're not building anything new, by putting in a secondary suite, it's considered a new space and subject to today's building code. One of those requirements is that you cannot have windows within a certain distance to the property line. If the house is too close to the neighboring property line, you might have to get rid of those windows, which can affect your unit's ability to achieve proper fire exits, natural lighting, and ventilation. All things being equal, choose a property where you have a good distance between you and your neighbors. This is good for other reasons as well. Number 6, is there a good amount of floor space? We all like more square footage, but it's more important than just being able to fit in that pool table. The building code has minimum size requirements for each space, including the living room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom, and each bedroom. In addition, some city bylaws have a minimum square footage requirement for the entire unit. In this respect, bungalows are a great option for basement suites, since the floor space is essentially equal to the main unit, with the exception of small areas such as the mechanical room. Number 7, is there a separate entrance to the secondary suite? Older homes generally have a second entrance to the house, which can easily be used as an entrance to the secondary suite if it's in the basement. In many newer homes, the entrance to the basement is in the middle of the house. Although you can still create a secondary suite this way, it's inconvenient and awkward to have a tenant go through the main unit to enter his or her apartment. You can always add a separate entrance, but of course this can be expensive, so it's better to have something in place. Number 8. Are there a good number of large windows? Windows are great, but for secondary suites, they're actually needed for possible fire escape, natural ventilation, and natural lighting. In general, especially if your secondary suite's in the basement, look for large windows, preferably above the ground. If the windows are partially or fully below ground with window wells and are used as a potential means of escape, the wells themselves need to be much larger as well. Also consider the distance of window and door openings between the 2 units. This is something that's also in the building code. Number 9, is it a nice and dry space? For basement secondary suites, it's important to ensure that the space is nice and dry before turning it into a place where occupants are going to be spending most of their time. The last thing you want is to have water leakage into a basement wall, resulting in harmful mold that can affect your tenants. In general, older homes don't have a great barrier against water entry. Newer homes tend to have a better protection against water entry. More importantly, however, is to realize that houses are not boats, and if water management is poor on the outside, it will almost always get on the inside. That's why it's important to take care of things like proper grading and ensure gutters and downspouts are working properly. And finally, number 10, is there a land survey? The last important thing to consider is whether or not the seller has a land survey. In order to get a building permit, most of the time you will need a survey in order to produce a proper site plan. If the seller has one, include it in your purchase agreement that they need to give it to you. In some cases, old site plans for previous permits might work as well. If you don't have a land survey or a proper site plan, it can take weeks and cost up to $2,000 to get one. So there you have it, 10 major things to consider before putting an offer on a property if your intent is to put in a legal, well-constructed, safe, healthy, and comfortable secondary suite. Let's quickly summarize. Number 1, does it already have an existing legal secondary suite? Number 2, make sure secondary suites are allowed in your area. Number 3, does it have enough ceiling height? Number 4, what's the parking availability like? Number 5, is there a good distance from the property line? Number 6, is there a good amount of floor space? Number 7, is there a separate entrance to the secondary suite? Number 8, are there a good number of large windows? Number 9, is the space nice and dry? And last but not least, number 10, is there a land survey? This is just the tip of the iceberg. There are dozens of other important factors that affect the requirements, cost, and overall function of the secondary suite. If you ever need guidance, contact us at suiteadditions.com for more help. We have provided consultations, design, and permit drawings to help numerous homeowners in the GTA create legal secondary suites. After that, you can sell it for a handsome profit, get greater cash flow from a paying tenant, rent it out on Airbnb, or simply let a family member use it, even if that family member is actually an in-law. Sign up on our site and receive up-to-date info on secondary suites and receive a free copy of our new guide, Legal Second Suites, a beginner's guide, covering everything we discussed here and much more. Subscribe to my channel below for more videos like this one. Again, this is Andy from suiteadditions.com, and thanks so much for watching.